Hi, this is Cindy, and this is going to be a quick lesson on how to set up the module using a few of the Blackboard tools. So the first thing you want to decide is where are you going to put your module or your lesson, right? And so I'm going to put mine in a lesson area because it's self-explanatory and it's a default menu item in our course. So anytime you get a brand new course assigned to you, it will have a lessons menu item on the left. If it didn't, you could always add one. Right, so the first thing I do is click on the lessons area. It's taking a minute to load. All right, so right now this is empty. Yours may look a tad different because it might be spread out. What I'm going to do is click this arrow here to spread this information out a little bit for you. There we go. Okay, so right now there's nothing in this area. There's nothing in my lesson area. All right, now there are two kind of main ways you can organize a module or a lesson, and those are by using folders and learning modules. And then within those folders or learning modules, you will add items, content. You'll add your content, whether it's an item, a video, etc. And I'll go over some of that as quickly as I can. So the first thing you want to do is click build content. Now that's going to be in order to create a folder or any of these things in here. Okay, you also can add different things, but right now we're talking about either a folder or a learning module. Okay, so let me show you first a folder. Oops, sorry. So this is a folder. I'm going to click folder. I already have a couple items over here. Let me find it here real quick. Okay, so I'm going to call this, first you give your folder a name. Okay, so I'm going to call this, I'm going to copy into it. I already have something typed. I'm going to call this Module 1, right, Addiction Overview. And then I would type something in here, right, if I was going to actually launch this. You wouldn't leave this empty, you'd have it be informative. Right now I'm not going to do that. Okay. And you scroll down and you can, on every folder and every module if you wanted, on every item in Blackboard, you could set dates, which I do often in my courses. For right now, I'm just going to leave everything like it is. And I'm going to hit submit. Okay, so this is a folder. This is what your folder looks like. Okay, so now I'm going to, let's say I'm going to have several folders. So let me just real quick throw in another folder so you can see if I were going to actually set up my course, there would be a number of items here. So this one will be module 2. Okay, and you can see if you take a look at the modules, the titles themselves, they're thematic. So they have themes. So for example, the one, if I look at this title, I can go, oh, that's an overview of the addiction. I look at module 2, I go, oh, that might be an overview of, or not an overview, but it might be talking about depressants. And it is. Okay, and remember, I'd have something explaining here. Okay, so this is what your folder looks like. Likewise, you could use, the learning module. I'm going to click this learning module, and this is going to look differently. This is going to create what you know to be the table of contents that you've seen in our course. Okay, so I'm going to submit. If you want a table of contents to appear, then you want to use a learning module. Now I tend to use both. All right, now here's the really important thing whenever you're using folders and learning modules. And that is that the next items you create to populate these items is that you go into it before you create items. All right, so for example, if I decide, okay, I want to have an overview item now. If I decide I want to do that, I don't click it, I don't do that on this page. If I want an overview item for depressants, I have to click into the folder first, then create my item. Okay? And I'll show you how to do that in a second. First, what I want to show you is how you might use both of these together. So let's say my first one is, my first unit is going to be addiction overview. Okay, now however you set it up is going to depend on how much content you have. So I might just use folders, I might just use learning modules, or I might use a combination of both. I tend to use a combination of both because I have a lot of content in my courses. So let's say I'm going to start off with folders because I can put learning modules in folders and it works really well. Okay, it works the other way also. You can put folders in learning modules, but I like the table of contents to be in to occur where I have most of my information. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into this folder called Addiction Overview. All right, now in Addiction Overview, I cover 2 chapters, Chapter 1, Chapter 2. In some of my others, I cover 4 or 5 chapters, okay? But in this one, I cover 2 chapters. So I think it's too much to put content for 2 chapters in this area right here without adding another way to organize it. So what I'm going to do is actually add 2 learning modules, one for Chapter 1 and one for Chapter 2. Okay, and you'll see how we do this in our course. We do this often. Okay, so let's say I have this chapter here. Sorry, I got to paste it. Chapter 1, issues, we'll call it. And I'm going to submit. Now this is a learning module, remember, so it's going to look like the couple pieces of paper. Okay, now I'm going to put, remember I'm still in the main vessel right now is my folder, and now I'm creating a couple units within my folder. All right, so down to learning module again. It might seem a little confusing if you just, that's right, policies. That's kind of another overview item. Let's do submit. When you just watch me do it like this, but when you actually start setting up your course and you look at a sample course, which I highly recommend while you're creating yours, you start to get the flow. All right, so now within each chapter, okay, I broke this up because I want all the content. I'm going to have 5 content items in this, and I'm going to have about 5 in here. For example, I'm going to have an overview, I'm going to have my course objectives, I'm going to have PowerPoint, I'm going to have a couple readings, and I'm going to have a quiz and maybe a discussion board. That's 6 items. So if I had 6 items here and 6 items here, and I didn't use learning units, then I would have like 12 items on this page. And that's not what I want. And students would be scrolling and scrolling, and they'd see a lot of content, They see so much reading, they'd be maybe perhaps overwhelmed. Okay, so I break it up, and I can break it up not only per chapter using the learning module, but when I use the learning module, remember I can also have my table of contents. So now I want to put content in here. So I'm going to click into this chapter. Okay, and now I'm going to create what I have referred to repeatedly. I'm going to create an item. You can create anything from that list that you just saw. Okay, so this is going to be overview of chapter 1. Okay. All right, now I'm just going to do some really quick ones here so I can get through all this for you so you can just get an idea what it'll be like. This is going to be course objectives. I would spell it out if I were doing it for my students, but I'm not. All right, and now I'm going to have, let's say I'm going to have another item, and it's going to be called my PowerPoint. Oops. So this is a resource, right? Everyone has a resource. Here we go. Look, I've done this before. You can see key terms in PowerPoint. Then I have another item. All right, now let's see. I want to add in an interactive tool, which would be a discussion board. So I'm going to throw a discussion board here. I'm just going to link to the actual forum. That's the main place. We'll just say attitudes. That's the name of the topic. Okay, and then next. All right, and then I have to go through here and set some settings. Display date, submit. I would set some of these if I were going to actually do it. I just want to show you what it's going to look like. Okay, attitudes. Now, let's say I also want to have in here I actually use a lot of videos in my courses. So I would maybe stick a video in here, okay, or link right to a YouTube item, okay. So I could click here if I wanted and throw in a YouTube video, which I don't happen to have handy right now, so I'm not going to do it, but I could. Now let's say the other thing I want to do is I want to create another assessment. Let's see if I have one I can just link to. Otherwise, I have to create one. I don't really want to go through all that. There we go. Look at all these tests. I have to pick one. Let me pick this. Oops. I went too fast, too far. Submit. Now this is where I would set, you know, options, but I'm not doing that now. I'm just trying to illustrate how to set up a module, not how to set up a test. Okay. So here's what we have now. Right? I have a learning unit. Now remember, all this typically would have much more content. So it would be covering a whole page. So would this, so would this. All right. Now, one thing I didn't do, I probably will have to go and change this real quick so that you'll be able to see it when I turn to the student view. It's not gonna, I'm in the wrong space. That's okay. That's because I didn't set those settings. Okay, we won't worry too much about that. You know the test is there. Okay, so let me now put the edit mode off so you can see what it looks like. All right, so this is what your student will see. Now, remember, they'll see stuff written here because I'll have a lot of stuff written here. Okay, and then you see the next item. That was an item, course objectives. They'll see my objectives here. They'll see my key terms and maybe a PowerPoint file, you know, if I have a link there, which I would. They'll see my video next if I had a video, but I don't have one. This is a discussion forum. If I click on this, it'll take me to my discussion area of the course. And then remember this down here. You can't see it now because it's unavailable to students, but you would see the test. So that's how I use a learning unit. I use a learning unit so it's all organized for them over here. They either click this item or they click this. If you want to see it how the student sees it, you've got to turn your edit mode off. Okay, and the reason I started with a folder, if you remember way back here, go back to this area, lessons, is because organizationally, it's easier to put a learning unit into a folder. As far as if I wanted the table of contents, and so because I wanted the table of contents, I make most of my content in a learning unit. If you don't want the table of contents, then you could just use a folder, okay, and bypass the learning unit, and then just add all those items just like I did, except then your students wouldn't have the contents and they would just see an entire page of information. Several pages of information actually. Okay, so it's sort of a personal preference, or also consider how much content you have. I have a lot of content, and if you put too much content in there without breaking it up, it tends to get confusing for students. And so I find both tools to be useful together. So a folder, a learning unit. If you accidentally forget that you need to go into the unit before you create an item, this is what it'll look like. Let's say you decide, okay, I'm going to create my first page and I'm going to put it in this learning unit. And then you just go up to the top and click item and you go chapter 10, let's say. You'll know you did it because it'll show up here. And this isn't where you, I'm sorry, this isn't really where you wanted it. You really wanted it in here. All right. And so if you do that a lot, let's say you do this 10 times before you notice it, then you can just go here and copy it into it if you wanted, or move it. You can move it. You just click move. All right, and then it'll show you a map of the course, and then you would pick whichever module you wanted it to go in. Okay, or whichever folder. Let's say I wanted it to go in here. Oops, okay, there we go. I'm about out of time. I'm not gonna, here we go. So remember it was here, now it's not. You go here, this is where I put it, and there it is. So you can copy it instead of having to delete and recreate. Okay, well, I hope that helps a little bit. Just some kind of a quick overview sort of how to use the function, how to create folders, how to create learning modules. Take a look at the sample courses, as I said. I really encourage you to do that and to create using a sample side by side to the course you're actually creating. All right, well, that's it for now. I hope it helps.